Okay, so get rid of the music database so far. Okay. I'm going to have to enlarge this a little bit. I've now got 4 tables. Album, track, person, and who was involved in recording each track. Album ID, track ID, person's login. Why? Well, if I've got a track, you would think that I could say, album ID number 1, track ID number 1, 3 people are involved, and then I could have a column, first person, name, second person, text, third person, text. I could record the names of the people involved. Right? I could say, first person was Bob Dylan, second person was Jimi Hendrix. Okay, how many columns should my table have? I can only have one value per record in a column. Okay. So, do I have one column for the artist? Doesn't handle duets. Do I have 2 columns? Doesn't handle the Beatles. Do I have 4 columns? Doesn't handle the Electric Light Orchestra. Do I have, whatever they were, 12 columns? Does not handle the Berliner Philharmonic Orchestra. Does not, no matter how many columns I've set aside, you will eventually find a piece of music that has to be associated with more people's names. Right? Say again?
That was my sibling's question.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to build back to that before we took the break. If I have 0 or more pieces of information that I need to associate with something, and there is no guaranteed absolute maximum, I shouldn't be trying to do a column for each piece. I should have a row for each piece because it's really hard to add columns to databases once they're created, but it's trivial to add rows. So what I'm going to do is have this table involved. It says, for that album and that track, here's somebody that was involved. So I'll have album 1, track 1, Bob Dylan, album 1, track 1, Emmylou Harris, album 1, track 1, Richard Johnson, album 1, track 2, Elvis Presley, album 1, track 2, Mary Margaret O'Hara, and so forth and so on. Right? Each entry will be a unique triple. Album ID, track ID, person. Okay? But I can add as many records as I want. Right? If there's 50 people who took part in recording, some Christmas charity song, I will have 50 entries with the same album and track ID, but 50 different login IDs. Bing, 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 bing. It is not how human beings write information down. You would not write in your notebook, who took part in this. You would write, greatest hits of the early 1980s, We Are the World, name, comma, name, comma, name, comma, name, comma, name, comma, name. That's the natural way for people to do it, but it doesn't work well for databases. Now, there is another way you could tackle this, but it's also bad. And that is to say, well, why don't I just take all the people's names and, just concatenate them. Just put commas in between and have Elvis Presley, comma, Mary Margaret O'Hara. Yeah, Harry Connick, comma, Jr. messes that up. If I'm using comma as the separator, and it actually appears in my data, concatenating everything with commas is wrong. Okay, well, I'll use some other separator character. Right? I'll use vertical bar. Vertical bar doesn't appear in people's names, I don't think, right? I mean, Prince is a special case, but doesn't belong in any database I manage. So, I could have the vertical bar character. Except now, if I want to say, find me all of the entries for Elvis Presley, I'm not saying, find me all of the entries where person name equals Elvis Presley. I'm saying, find me all of the entries where ELVIS space PRESLEY appears somewhere in this concatenated list of names, because I glued them all together. That is tremendously slower, like thousands and thousands of times slower. Right? So much slower that it's just not worth doing. It is better to do this, which appears to store redundancy, than it is to concatenate strings and break them apart. Golden rule of databases, you should never have to decompose any particular value in the database. You might join them together temporarily for reporting or statistical purposes, but each value is what should be what is called atomic. It's a name, it's an age, it's a whatever. Dates in real databases are rarely stored as year-month-day. They're normally stored as year, month, and date, 3 different columns, because you always want to process them that way. Names are rarely stored as full names. They're almost always stored as personal name, family name, or personal name, family name suffix. Junior, the third, things like that. And this is why. You never want to have to grab a value and break it into pieces before you can do anything with it, because that's really, really slow. Okay. This has been a crush of information in an hour and a half. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 15-minute break, get a little bit of air, get some coffee. I will get these 4 scripts up on the website so that you guys can grab them. We'll start doing some exercises, but you've got 15 minutes to get some air, get some exercise.